Hey, Ryan Struck here, and today we're talking about traveling with a purpose. So the thing I wanted to talk about today was travel, and even though something like a pandemic, let's say right now, is restricting our travel, um, it's not the time to go anywhere, or we really kind of can't. But as a freelancer, this is something that we're all used to. Like maybe it's not travel, but it's work. If there could be a work freeze because of this pandemic, or if you're watching this video sometime in the future and it's the slow season for you, um, there's always like the ups and downs of freelancing and also being an artist. Not only do we feel our creative flow ebb and go, which I talked about last time, but also work can ebb and flow. Aside from what's happening now, um, I mean, it's dangerous, and I'm not discounting that, and it's very serious. But we're no strangers to all of a sudden, let's say, like having like the rug pulled out from underneath us, and like, okay, there's no work this month, or you have like, it's raining work, and then all of a sudden it just stops, and it ends, and that is where we don't have creative control. Like some of our most favorite things, whether they're personal projects or jobs, is when somebody like kind of hands you the keys and hands you like the reign of, hey, do what you want, do what it is that you do, and happy to see the results. That's like a dream, and in this case, the way that I sort of like to keep my creative juices flowing is a thing like travel. And now I'm like, okay, wow, I'm like sort of pinned down. So what can you do, and where would this type of restriction ever lead you somewhere creatively? Because like you can sit there and think, damn, I can't do the things that I want to do. I can't hang out with my friends or go out to eat or all these other things. But what I'm challenging you is to take this restriction and really funnel it into understanding what it is that you want to see and where you want to go. The fact is that, yeah, we can't travel, but that just like kind of hones you into to understanding where it is you want to go. And really, I think what I'm getting at is, to be purposeful. Whereas probably most of us couldn't just uh, jump on an airplane in the morning. All current times aside, like as somebody who travels quite a bit myself, like I don't know if I necessarily even have the freedom, to just get a plane ticket and go. So what I think that, this maybe feeling like these feelings of restriction, I think that if you channeled them into purpose, you'd find a lot more, maybe meaning in where it is that you want to go. Um, so yeah, like, I just want to encourage you guys to use that to your advantage. Like use like the brain power and headspace to really figure it out where like you really want to go. So often, maybe we just see these things, whether it's online, or we read about them and we're like, man, I really want to go there, or like I really want to go here, or like, what's like the famous quote? I think I've seen it like probably in Instagram bios. Like it's like, how does it go? It's like, I haven't been everywhere, but it's on my list. I mean, I'm sure we all feel that way. Like I would love to go everywhere. I do want to go everywhere. But now that I can't go anywhere, where exactly do I want to go? And I feel like that's a really exciting question to ask yourself. I'm not one who loves to be told what to do, and I think that's probably an artist thing. We're probably all there. Um, so I'm like, oh, I can't go here, but really, I think it's almost a blessing, in by ways of creativity. So like, I'm framing everything by ways of creativity. We can get into the seriousness of all this, but like let's leave that aside for now, and let's try and figure out how you all can channel these things. Where is it that you would love to go? Um, but like I really want you to start asking yourselves the questions of like, have you ever been somewhere and it maybe didn't work out like you thought it was gonna? Um, just as a personal story for me, I I went to Iceland a few years back. I forget exactly. Maybe it was, I forget the date. But I went a bunch of years back, and it was still, it was a popular place to go. It was at the height. I mean, in Iceland probably still is at the height. It's a beautiful place, but I did a lot of investigating on Instagram. I was like, oh, that place looks cool. That spot looks awesome. I would like to go there. So I show up to one of the natural hot springs, and on Instagram it was empty. There was nobody there. There's these beautiful mountains in the background. I was like, whoa, how cool would it be to go there and sit in a pool of hot water and look up at these mountains that are all snow capped. So I get there, I arrive, and there are a bunch of people there. They're all like drinking beers and partying, and it's loud, and like this like pool is packed to the gills with people. Um, People are kind of hammered. It was like midday. Like it was not what I was looking for. It was not the scene I was looking for. I was actually kind of bummed. I didn't even get in the water, and I left to go find something else. So what I guess I'm sharing is that I've had these experiences where travel maybe didn't work out the way I wanted them to. But what it did is that it refocused and rehoned my ideas of the things that I wanted to do. I mean, I still, of course, source things on Instagram. It's a great way to get a look at a place, but it's not like I'm not like putting all my eggs in a basket. It taught me that lesson, but it also allowed me to be like, oh, okay, like, so I know what I do and I don't like. Some people might thrive in that kind of setting. Like some people, you may want to go travel and go meet a bunch of people from all over the world and like, just like, but I was there to like kind of make some quiet landscapes, I'd say, or, I wasn't there for like a social aspect, which sometimes, that is the purpose. I think asking yourself these questions of why you're going somewhere is extremely helpful. And also, like, allow like a negative experience to reframe the way that you think about travel. There's like nothing wrong with that. I think one of the best things in life we can learn are the things that we don't like, because then we know that we won't do them in the future. And I know that sounds overly simple, but I think now's a really great time to really think about where it is you want to go and what you want to see, and remember to be critical with yourself and ask yourself the critical questions. And not necessarily remember the bad times, but remember, allow that to steer your path a little bit. um, so when I choose a destination, I think to myself, why am I going? And the easiest way to answer that is to ask yourself what you love shooting, and that can be one of the hardest questions. So I feel like one of the ways to do it is, figure out, or, be real with yourself. What do you shoot when you're by yourself? Where do you go and what do you do? What do you like to see? When I'm alone, I go out in the world, and I'll usually, the way that I've been doing it lately is I give myself sort of a one lens challenge. This week, which has been pretty fun, is, I mean, and I feel like last week and the past couple of weeks, I've been walking around with a macro lens. I look at things really close, and then also it's a 90 millimeter, so it's like a medium telephoto, so I can still shoot things from afar. And I'll say, as I was using it yesterday, I wished I had the 50 millimeter. Finally, I felt this feeling, like the past 2 weeks or so, like I've been like just kind of moving around a lot just with the macro lens. And I was thinking about it yesterday. I was walking around by myself along a bridge, and I was looking at the water and the road, and I decided that this was one of the great questions to ask you guys today was, what is it that you shoot when you're by yourself? Because a lot of us work with other people, um, whether that's like we're shooting weddings or we're shooting portraits or we're shooting our pets. We're working with something else, or somebody else, or What is it that you do when you are so restricted where you can't really maybe move around? What are you going to shoot next? You know, I think honing in on that, when you know what you're happy doing on your own, that'll lead you to figure out what you're going to be happy doing elsewhere. Because remember, we're the same person no matter where we go, whether we're home or away. You know, parts of us may change, or we may see different parts of ourselves. I'll say for me, when I'm traveling, I'm like, just my eyes are like giant, and I'm looking at everything, and I'm talking to everybody. I'm probably slightly more outgoing when I'm away, but I'm still the same person. I still want to shoot the same things, and for me, it can vary. Sometimes I want to be with people and photograph them and make portraits, and other times I'm walking along a bridge shooting cracks in the road. Um, but you know, basically, what I'm saying is that, you know, if you're somebody who loves landscape, then, you know, outdoor landscape or pretty, like, you know, national park vibes, then, you know, going to Chicago to be around architecture may not be the best travel move for you unless architecture is also a thing. You know, I pick Chicago because the architecture is really amazing. I've only been there once or twice, but you know, that's what really stood out to me. And what I've learned is that, um, traveling somewhere and not getting out of it what fulfills you creatively is a really tough lesson to learn. Um, so I'm encouraging you guys to be as critical as you can beforehand. Um, you know, as another example, I love big nature and solitude. Um, so recently, I chose California to go to. I was there for the month of February. I have some friends there. It's a familiar place for me. There's plenty of outdoor time, and you know, camping and van lifestyle is extremely accepted out there. So if I wanted to drive around and see things, I wouldn't pick New York City as my destination. Um, though I would encourage you to drive around and see things in New York, but it's just not the vibe I was going for. So like I I've been to Chicago, and like, hey, I had fun there. It was good in the city. I like going out to eat or seeing shows or, you know, stuff like that. But that's not truly who I am inside. I like those things, but what I've found is that I need them maybe more strategically in my life. I don't need to always be around them. So if you gave me a week in Chicago, that's like probably 5 days too much for me. Not that there isn't a lot to see, but just that there isn't a lot that fulfills me creatively there. Unless I'm like working or, you know, there's plenty of things that I can go and see if I have to be there, but I always choose the outdoors. And, you know, I'm speaking from experience. I've lived in New York City for 5 or 6 years, and you know, so I know it may sound funny coming from, you know, a city person, but really, I've honed in on what it is that I really love to see and do and to photograph, and that's what I'm encouraging you guys to do too. Um, you know, some of the questions that came in last week when I announced the class was, somebody mentioned something like, how do you when you feel like you're doing something over and over again, how do you break free of that? You know, a lot of times we just jump on a plane, or we get in a car and we go somewhere new, and that's really refreshing. So but how can we do that now? The way that I'm encouraging that is that, you know, I have seen the same neighborhood over and over. Some neighborhoods I've seen over and over for my whole life. You know, we're all from somewhere, and whether you've moved away or you go home to visit or you live there for a period of time, being somewhere for years can really feel repetitive. And as a creative, you start to think like, I've seen that, or that's not interesting, or that, you know, or like you're just looking for one specific thing. And I think that we can all travel even in our backyards, and that's advice that I am taking. So that's why I'm giving it. But I do understand how hard that medicine can be to swallow. I grew up in New Jersey for like my whole life, you know, um, and I was born and raised here. And, you know, I picked up a camera in my 20s. And so and I'm now here in New Jersey while this is happening, and I'm in my 30s, and I feel like I've seen everything. I'm like, I've seen all this, I know all this stuff. Um, but what I've been doing lately is going for walks. If you can go for a walk by yourself somewhere, or maintain your distance from somebody else, really going around and trying to see the world that you're familiar with in a different and a new way, I think is a precursor to maybe how you'll be as you travel. If I like to walk around here in New Jersey and just shoot photos on my own, I know I'll be content to do that elsewhere too. So the parallel I'm making is that I want you guys to take that travel vibe and remember that that is a state of mind, and that's something that you can keep cultivating even when you're not somewhere new, even when like it feels like you've seen everything. I promise you, you haven't, even in your own backyard. One way that I do it is I get in the car and I drive and I drive and I drive and I look, and when I see something that I really like, I'm like, oh, should really get out of the car and do it. And I just kick myself in the ass. And I think we all need a little bit of a kick sometimes, you know, to get out there, because there's some, and you can be walking, biking, skating, whatever. I think the main important thing to do is to bring the camera with you, and remember that your point of view is interesting, and you also don't have to share it with anybody. I talked about last class how I wanted to make sure you guys were sharing your work. That is really important. But remember, everything that you shoot, you don't have to share at all. Um, one thing I will do though is share with you guys what I shot yesterday, like just to make an example of like, this is stuff that is like nothing to me, you know. I think let's get the screen share going. So this stuff is like, I walked around and this is what I saw in New Jersey. Um, it's just pictures of what I seen, stuff I've seen every day. I walked over a bridge and I loved the like the weird patches on it, you know, like, but I don't have to show anybody this stuff. This stuff looks nothing like the work that I have on my website, right? And I shot like, I don't know, like 200 photos yesterday of a bridge, of a bunch of holes in the ground. But I was happy doing it. You know, I saw some cool cars, some cool, like interesting houses. So let me get back to you guys here. How do I do this? Stop share. So the point of that, you know, is to show you that you can walk around and look at nothing and have a lot of fun doing it. Just being in that creative moment, that creative zen, that space of meditation, for me is the ultimate. And I know that it's up to me. That comes from in here. Even if I can't leave or I can't go somewhere, like I said, as a creative, you're gonna have all kinds of freezes. Like, you know, it's gonna be work related. Maybe work drops off and you don't have any work, or maybe it's seasonal and it's the wintertime and nothing's really happening, or maybe you have personal obligations and you can't travel. There's always going to be something that hinders you from doing the thing that you always dream about. One, keep after that dream because you will achieve it. And two, remember that traveling is just a state of mind. Having that creative flow is so energizing when you step off a plane, or you open the car door and you're somewhere new, or you go to a place that you've never seen, or you look up at a mountain and it's at sunrise and it's gorgeous, or whatever it is for you. That traveling mindset feels that's in tandem of that creative flow of yours. I promise you, that creative flow does not matter. It doesn't matter where you are. You can channel that and you can keep those things open. You can be ready to receive that creativity when it hits. You can also, you can't make it happen, but you can set yourself up for it to happen. And there's plenty of times when I walk around with a camera and I don't shoot anything, but I have the camera with me and I feel like I accomplished something because I got outside or I was at least ready to take a picture if I saw one. Um, my favorite form of travel, though, is sort of to just wing it, and that's what I did in February. I kind of thought about this idea for a while too, much in the same vein that we can't just take off whenever we want. I in 2019, yeah, the beginning of 2019, I was like, oh man, I want to get a van and do like the whole van life thing. It didn't work out. But that idea stuck in my head, and I didn't travel much last year, a little bit, some for work, and I had to leave and come right back. So I didn't necessarily get to enjoy the travel. But this idea of being in a van and seeing things really sort of just was marinating in my brain, So um, I had that idea and I didn't do it for another 10 months or almost maybe a year. So travel is really something that you kind of got to plan for. As much as I don't love a plan, especially for personal travel, you need a little bit of one. And it really took me a little while to do some research. I found a minivan for 650 bucks. I found a one-way ticket to LA for 100 bucks. So I did it on the cheap. And my thinking behind this was, okay, if I want to go to California for a while, what would allow me to be there and to make it as affordable financially as possible? And I was like, I'll just sleep in a van. Can that work? It was just an idea I had, but it took me a long time to think about it. Last year, I didn't think like, oh, I should rent a minivan and then do it. Like, I was like, no, okay, I need to find a van, something I could sleep in. It was like this big process. I made it way too complicated for myself. Also, I didn't know, would I even like that? Would I like that lifestyle? Do I want to do that kind of thing? Um, so this travel idea of mine took me a while. And it wound up being one of my favorite trips ever. I mean, it's top three. I would have to think a little while before I call it number one, but it might very well be. But the whole point of that is that I really had to think about, what do I want? What do I want out of travel? What do I want to see? I want to see big nature. I want to see the ocean. I I want to do it on my own. I want to go solo, and I really want the freedom to be able to go wherever I want without having to pay $100 a night for a motel or 300 bucks for a couple days in an Airbnb. I can't afford that. So it just dawned on me. I don't know where I got the idea from, but I was like, oh, let me go to Google. How much are minivans? I found it for 800 bucks. I was like, okay, not bad. And then I eventually found more and more of a deal, and I got it for like 650, like I said. So like, instead of just impulsively like buying that plane ticket, which we obviously can't do now, it takes some time to research. And really, the best way to do this stuff is through your practice in photography, or if your practice is in painting, or if it's in design. Really, it's do what creatively fulfills you, and have this idea of where you want to go in mind, and allow it to come. Open the channels for your creativity to flow, but be receptive to these ideas when they're going to come, and then refine them. Ask yourself the critical questions. Why do I want to go here? What do I want to see or do? And is this something that I can actually do? Is it worthwhile? Um, California was great, and I can show you guys a little bit of that if you'd like, but also I want to open this stuff up for questions from you guys. Um, there's not many of us in here, which is cool. So it's super intimate. If you want to unmute yourself and ask some questions, or if you want to type into the chat, that's totally cool too. Um, feel free to do that. I'm just going to pull up these photos real quick in case there are no questions at this point. Okay, awesome. So, I mean, this gives you an idea of a broad stroke of what I photographed in California. I was by myself. I mean, I met up with friends, but I was mostly north of where everybody I knew lived, basically. And as you can see, I just shot a bunch of landscape stuff, some friends. This was Ojai. but I didn't really make it a point to like get anything or do anything. For me, I wanted the landscape and the journey to dictate what it is I saw and did. I stayed with friends occasionally, but mostly I just slept in the van. A couple of these nights were amazing. This was in Big Sur. I just got to do whatever it was I got to do. I I saw the world the way that I felt like by myself. This is like a star. I think this is actually Venus. I just dragged it across the sky. That's a horizon. Like I didn't shoot for anybody but myself, and I only pulled the camera out when I really felt inspired or I wanted to make something. And I'll say that this travel was definitely born of um there's a little spider, of just being curious and letting my idea really just saturate into my head. I none of this stuff is necessarily going to go into like my portfolio, like the part where I'm trying to sell myself to other people, sell my work, but some of it will probably make it into some personal projects for sure. I've toyed with the idea of maybe making this its own little section on my website. I wrote a lot when I was away. Um, Basically, what I did is I listened to myself. I asked myself the tough questions, the hard things. Let me get back to you. The hard things that I knew would really bring me to the right place that I wanted to be. So, like, as you can see from all that stuff, like it's landscape. It's just, um, the subject is just sort of the outdoors. Um, but but it took me a while to get there. I mean, literally, it took me 6 hours to get there once I got on a plane. But it took me almost a whole year to be there on that trip. It was a month long. That's a tough time to be away for that amount of time. I had no work in February. It worked out perfectly. Um, but planning for travel, so much of it just looks so like easy, from what we see online and what we see from other photographers who are always traveling. I fall victim to that stuff too, the comparison game. And the less you can do that, the more healthy your own travel will be, the more life will be breathed into your own work too. I thought about this idea and I eventually let off the gas when it just wasn't coming together last year. Like I said, it was all these things that I sort of had to think about. But once I let go of the expectations of the things I needed to go travel, the idea came to me and I was able to execute it. So what I want you all to do is to just realize that travel's restricted, nobody's moving. Um, Sink further into your creative process, and let these ideas marinate. Like maybe you normally, if friends were going to, I don't know. I don't want to pick a place and pick on anybody, but if friends were like going to, like, let's say this destination, and normally you would just said, yeah, I'll just go. Maybe this time is going to allow you to reframe your purpose for actually going. That's basically the whole point here. Travel is just your state of mind, and that can be tough advice for even myself to swallow, because I do also rely on going somewhere new, seeing somewhere new. It just instantly gives you that jolt. But let's take this time now to really figure out where it is we want to go and what it is that we like to see. um, and I feel like that's really going to set us up for future travel. And I think coming out of this, a lot of us are going to feel more refocused, and we're going to reframe things in a more purposeful way. And when we can tie those things together, the ideas will kind of just like hit you, and you might be surprised. Maybe you'll be going on your own adventure that you never would have saw yourself kind of doing. um, that's pretty much it for today. That was sort of the spiel here. If anybody's got any questions, I know some of us are artists working in different mediums. You guys are more than welcome to ask any questions, whether it's photo related, creativity related. I'm happy to chat. I have, I have the afternoon off, so um,
Hey man,
feel free.
Ryan. So
Yeah.
I already know your gear, like your Sony stuff. What are you currently thinking about, like gear that you bring versus like what's your necessities in this? Like, what are you feeling is your absolute in this camera bag that you take on any trip?
That's a good question. Yeah, because I had it. So I over prepared for that trip, which was interesting because I feel I would call myself a minimalist maybe. But when it comes to photo, I guess all bets are off. I wound up bringing some extra stuff I didn't need, but for that trip, I brought the Sony with the macro lens, and I brought a 35 millimeter and a 24 to 70, and then a 70 to 200. And then I brought a
Yeah,
medium
way too
format
much.
camera with film. So like I brought a lot of stuff. It just all depends. The way that I think about it is um, I try and think about how I'd feel in the future. So if I was on that trip while I was packing, I go, if I was really missing a 70 to 200 while I was out there, then I should definitely bring it. So I basically am thinking ahead of time, what don't I want to regret not having? And I know for travel, I would always rather be over prepared than not, and that can be cumbersome. I mean, I brought a drone too that I only flew twice out there just because I was busy, like seeing stuff with my own two eyes, or just enjoying moments, or I didn't feel like flying. Um, I'd say your best bet when packing is to bring all the things that you don't want to be without, but don't go overboard. Be critical also. Ask yourself the question, like, will I really use this? Do I really need it? And that macro lens, I knew I didn't necessarily need, but the way that I thought about it was, I was like, all right, I know I'm going to get to a point, or I might get to a point where I feel like I want to see the world differently. And and I want something that's just, it's almost so restrictive that I can only do one thing with it. So when I was in Joshua Tree, I hiked around a bunch one day, and I think I might have brought I only brought the macro, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I brought the macro and the medium format camera on that hike only. And so I looked at everything close up. I like saw ladybugs and cacti and flowers and the rocks and the cracks, and I just looked at everything super close up, as like a fun challenge. I guess I've been using this macro quite a bit, but yeah, I mean, just don't be without something that you're going to regret. I even brought a flash with me just in case. I over prepared, but yeah, that is like one of the toughest things, huh? Um, but yeah, anybody else?
How would you feel about bringing a macro extension versus your actual macro
I mean, I
lens?
want to get an extension actually. Yeah, I do. I was thinking, I was like, man, it would be cool to be even closer. I mean, you can fall down the rabbit holes always, of anything, So, like it's like with wide angle lenses, it's like, oh man, I brought a 24. I'm like, oh, what would this look like at 15? So, the photographer's quandary is always choosing gear and bringing, the right stuff with you. But I also don't like to bring too much. What has been freeing is that I've just been walking around with this camera, with only the 90 millimeter on it the past couple weeks, and now I know it's time to change. So, but it is cool. You make less decisions. At least for me, making less decisions about your camera stuff is is easier when you don't have to. When you don't have to have all the things, you don't need them all. Um, but yeah, sweet. Well, thanks for tuning in, Lucas. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ryan, that's a cool viewpoint. I've been doing a lot of street photography recently, and
Yeah,
just going out like one day choosing a 24, another day a 50. When you're at that prime focal length, it's super nice to actually really think about your compositions. So, being less restricted, having one lens on there, that's what you're shooting on all day. That's a cool way to just to go out and try and make photos.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's cool you mentioned street photography, because that's like, I feel like that is like the street photographer's ethos. Like, what's the old school lens? Isn't it like 20 millimeters or something like that? It's something super wide. And then I forget the name of the photographer who said it, but he's like a famous photographer. And if you're not getting good photos, you're not close enough, you know. And I think that is a really interesting way to look at it. And yeah, I mean, I like shooting in the street. Like that stuff I showed you from Jersey, basically is street photography. It's just not in a city, you know. It's like cracks in the ground and stuff. And I had a good time doing it. But yeah, just to hone your practice and to really understand, much in the same way, I'm encouraging you to really think about what it is you like to see, so that when you travel, you know you're going to see it. You know, what is it that you really like to photograph? Like, what lenses do you like? Like, I mean, I have a favorite lens. It's my 35 millimeter. It is awesome. Like, it is so sharp. The colors are great. It's really nice and beautiful. But I'd be just as happy using a camera with a 50 millimeter. You know, it doesn't, focal length doesn't matter, but what's great is giving yourself less choice, putting that 50 on there and rocking with that only, or putting the 24 on only, you know, like putting the 90 millimeter on only. That's a weird one. That's like, I must I must be really trying to challenge myself, because I'm like, 90 is really tough. But yeah, I love that you mentioned street photography, man. Yeah, because that's really like, that's the heart of it right there. You just put one lens on and you go. Less decisions, and you're more looking for that moment. Because when you're thinking less about your gear or what should you put on or fumbling with a lens, you're seeing through the viewfinder. You know, you're through that thing and you're living in that moment for real.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's freeing, sort of. You're like, no worries. You just go out and you shoot, try and capture whatever you see. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else? A couple of us left. No? Cool. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. I know this is like a weird one. I'm gonna keep you guys updated on I've got the email list going. And also I've contacted Zoom, and figuring all those things out before, you know, it was too much of a good thing, I guess. You know, one of the magazines shared it, and kind of things all went to hell, and that was really weird, and it was a real strange one for me. So if anybody here was tuned in and saw all that go down, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry. That's like really embarrassing, and it sucks, but you know, it's also a learning lesson. This is like my second one, and I want to keep giving back, and really, the more engagement we have here, the better we all benefit. You know, I want us all to have access to everything that everybody talks about in here, myself included, you know, everybody else, because people share some really cool stuff. The first go around, people were sharing really awesome questions, places, resources. Also, with just everything that's happening now, I'm learning a lot about what's happening in the creative field that I want to share with you guys. And I appreciate you guys coming on back and all that. So I recorded this, and I'll get it up online for everybody, and I'll see y'all at the next one. Thanks.